Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. It is Thursday, August 16th, 2018, getting closer to that fateful date of August 18th, 2018, when we talk about how many 18s there are. I'm so anxious to have something fun and interesting to talk about that I'm willing to give time over 2 days in advance to something that's actually not even all that exciting anyway, and besides which it'll be it'll be Saturday on the 18th, so I'm not even going to do it. Special show coming up, I guess, on Saturday. I've just committed myself to it. Damn, I'm trying to lighten my workload. I should get on with getting some of these smart appliances. Maybe that will help me out here. I see Atrios on a tear this morning talking about all the super smart ideas that billionaires and wannabe billionaires are coming up with to improve our lives. One of which is actually, one of them is just flat dumb. And the other one is also, I guess, a little more Ripley, but also dumb. This is interesting. Let's give us something to talk about. But this morning, he was on quite a tear, I guess, posting over at his dumb blog, as he likes to call it, about the latest Elon Musk idea. And it just makes for an interesting discussion. At some point, we'll have that discussion that he's reached that plateau, that place in American business where Donald Trump thinks he is constantly, where just every dumb thing you utter is treated as a brilliant business idea, prophetic in some way, world-changing, this is going to change everything, and all it takes is a moment's thought to realize, well, one, it's the same idea over and over again, and two, it wasn't a very good one to begin with, and three, this is an ill-fitting thought in the first place, and just honestly, it's time to abandon all of it. But I guess in his follow-up, looking for dumb ideas from an interesting account and well worth following. You know about the Internet of Things, which of course is really an Internet of stuff that you've connected to the Internet. Regular everyday things, but connected to the Internet so that things like identity and data can be stolen from you. And they have the right idea over at the Twitter account, Internet of S word. And, for some reason we like to pretend we're on the radio here and say things like that. And I guess it's so children can listen to this show and be indoctrinated and whatnot, like a re-education camp, just like the Obama Corps and the Obama Army that Barack was raising among school children by addressing them at the beginning of the school year. Hey, kids, stay in school or whatever. You remember that whole controversy. Everything, of course, now upside down. But anyway, the Internet of S word, all one word when you're looking for their Twitter account. Always fun. This one just happened to caught my eye. Introducing the washing machine with zero benefit for you. Pay per wash and a monthly fee. Surge price on washing. And we are also good at internet security. Somebody is actually out there, I guess, trying to sell this. And I guess you can find them on Twitter, too, with their new product. Washing machine that they're calling Blue Horizon, which is a Miele electronics product, and I guess somehow connected to the internet. Look forward to the Blue Horizon washing machine at home. The advertising material tweeted herein announces, without having to buy the appliance yourself. That sounds great. I don't have to buy anything. You pay for the use, depending on how much you wash. And beyond that, the Blue Horizon also automatically takes over the detergent purchase for you. Discover the comfort, wash with state-of-the-art technology, and pay for it. That's such a huge advantage versus the washing I don't pay for right now. But basically, I don't even know. Somewhere there's a room full of people coming up with old ideas that they slap an internet connection on and pretending that they are new ideas. And it's really quite annoying, and I have always thought it would make for an interesting parody account on something to come up with ideas that couldn't possibly work because they are either deeply personal, or the delivery has to be made immediately, or there's simply no way to keep things either perishables or whatever. Or, are you tired of, taking care of going to the bathroom in the morning? Why not outsource it? Let's say Yellow Horizon rather than Blue Horizon, and if you're waking up in the middle of the night and it's disturbing your sleep to go to the bathroom, or you just hate being dragged out of bed to go to the bathroom first thing in the morning, why not outsource that to the gig economy? Our app will make it possible for you to find someone else who's already awake to go to the bathroom for you. I mean, does this not seem like a great idea? I think we could probably make this work. I'm also thinking, stuff like ice cream delivery would be fun to do. And, within next day, using next day air, we'll mail your... And why buy so much of it, right? Why not buy the spoonful? How much do you really... if you're going to eat as much as you scooped into your bowl, why waste anything or take in extra calories when you can simply have it delivered by the spoonful? Some things just aren't meant for internet delivery, but for whatever reason, there's a whole world out there of people who think it should be, and I guess that brings us stuff like the Juicero, which we heard about not all that long ago, but it's a constant stream of this garbage. Maybe if we really get bored, we'll talk about Elon Musk's latest dumb idea, but for a better thing to do with our time, the all-new and totally correct Greg Dworkin Skype account is connected, and if there's a Russian on the other end of this one, I'm going to be upset. Good morning, Tovarish. How are you?
Good morning, comrade. How are you?
Yes, thank you. I don't know if I said that correctly or not. I do not speak Russian.
I wouldn't know. I don't speak Russian.
I don't know anyone who does. I have never had any connections with them whatsoever.
It's ridiculous. Das Vedonia.
Right.
So,
plus I'm Transylvanian again.
Speaking of dumb things, I just had this cross my Twitter feed, and I had to open it because it was just so dumb I can't believe it. It's from Politico, which is not surprising. They do dumb things. Yeah. But here's the headline. Quote, "If they take the House, he wins big," end quote. "Trump loyalists see upside in impeachment."
Oh, excellent.
Why some Trump allies think his path to re-election runs through an effort to kick him out of the Oval Office.
I don't know, but help me help you.
Yeah, let's see if we can unpack this. There's a new way of demonstrating loyalty to Donald Trump and his Republican Party, claiming that the president could not only survive an impeachment effort, but that it would guarantee his victory in 2020.
Yes, I agree with this strategy. They should try.
The idea is that Trump is Bill Clinton, not Richard Nixon.
Yes.
And so, the big picture here is instead of forcing him out of office, it would only make him more popular with people.
Right. This is also the popular ending of Star Wars.
Right. The notion that has surfaced spontaneously among a diverse set of conservatives who talk to each other, and therefore it's not spontaneous, is that it's all about going all in on a scorched earth policy. Quote, "They're also the diehards who aren't afraid to align themselves with pro-Trump positions even before the president has warmed to them himself," end quote.
Okay.
They're increasingly convinced that Democratic House victory in the midterms and subsequent impeachment push would backfire and ultimately help the president in 2020.
Subsequent impeachment push. So
the market always
overcorrects. Before
overcorrects.
and after.
The whole idea is that it's based on, it's all political and there's nothing really there.
Yes. Sure.
Right? Proponents, the article says, of the go for broke scenario argue that Trump's at his best when his back's against the wall, and that a move to impeach would both rally the base and make the president sympathetic to moderate voters. Okay. Look, if they investigate him and find out reasons for impeaching, like collusion, then no. The whole idea behind this is that Trump is a poor innocent victim of the bad, mean, big bad liberal press.
Yes.
And of course that's why the whole thing falls apart, because that's not exactly what's going on.
Oh. Well, what if it was exactly what was going on? Would that also probably be wrong?
We'll have to ask Alex Jones, although it'll be hard to know because not only is he now kicked off Twitter for at least a week, but his radio station was just closed down by the FCC because apparently he doesn't have a license.
Oh, I mean, okay. I don't.
It's tough being a Nazi these days. There are all these rules.
Well, it's a rules-based thing. Nazism.
It's just, so annoying. So let's give you some polling. There's a bunch of recent polling, which is of interest.
What if you could
The
outsource
generic
being
congressional
Nazi?
vote, there was 3 polls that came out yesterday of note.
Yes.
Reuters Ipsos is now Democrats +9, Quinnipiac Democrats +9, and CNN is Democrats +11.
That's
And then
Trump's plan.
Yeah, there's a 4th poll
good
you
for
haven't
him.
heard of from Navigator Research. The generic
not.
ballot is Democrats +8, but the lead grows to double digits when it's framed as a Democrat who will check or oppose Trump versus a Republican who will help or support Trump.
But that's not
Suggesting
enough.
Trump is an anchor on Republican candidates. As James Carville used to say, when your opponent is in trouble, throw him an anvil.
Yes, and he's got that. Throw him a gold anvil. He might reach
So
for
Democrat versus Republican is 45-37. Democrat who mostly opposes Trump versus Republican who mostly supports Trump is 52-39. And if you phrase it a little milder, Democrats who votes to be a check and balance on Trump versus a Republican who votes to help Trump pass his policies, 50-38.
Ah.
So 12 or 13-point lead, depending on how you look at that.
How about
11, 9. I mean, these numbers, as Stu Rothenberg tweeted this morning, there's a wave coming and it ain't red.
Okay. I would like to see the question, how about a Democrat who mostly opposes Trump versus a Republican who mostly supports Trump, but the Democrat who mostly opposes him says that's not enough a lot.
Right. Well, we got a story about that, too, of
Oh,
course.
okay.
And we have an even better one.
I have
How about
policies,
this
he'll
one?
say.
A Democrat who opposes Trump but supports Pelosi
Oh.
versus a Republican who supports Trump but doesn't know who Pelosi is.
This is some combination, and
Well,
they don't like mustard.
I don't know how to combine. Let's put mustard and ketchup together and call it mayonnaise. We have this
Might as well.
CNN poll.
Yes.
Harry Enton's moved from 538 to CNN as an analyst, and he has this piece. Republican House candidates have attacked the Democratic opponents over their future potential vote to make Nancy Pelosi the Speaker of the House again. Many Democrats, fearing potential electoral repercussions, have responded by pledging not to vote for her if they're elected.
I see. I was ready to make one of those hats. Make Pelosi
Right.
Speaker again.
But
Yeah.
CNN's new poll suggests Democrats may be overreacting.
To what? I don't know.
Well, while the California Democrat remains unpopular, her impact on people's votes in November looks
okay.
like it's going to be minimal.
I see.
Can you imagine that? I mean, it's
yes.
just like all the ads. Well, Nancy, first they tried taxes and that didn't work, and then they tried this or that and that didn't work, and then it's, oh, well, if you vote for the Democrat, you're voting for Nancy Pelosi, and they continue to do really poorly in special elections. So, it hasn't worked, but they keep doing it because they have nothing else. 34% of registered voters say Pelosi will be an extremely or very important factor in their vote this fall. That ranks dead last of the 10 factors asked about by CNN.
It's not enough to be anti-Pelosi. Where's that article?
Yeah, exactly.
I cannot find it. All right.
Because
it really isn't.
the Harry Enton one?
Oh,
That
well.
I'm just reading?
No.
Is that the one
I'm waiting for shouldn't there be a slew of articles? I've waded through tons of, it's not enough to be anti-Trump, and I'm waiting for it's not enough to be anti-Pelosi, you Republicans.
Yeah, you have to be
But it
anti-Mitch
is.
McConnell.
Wow.
Oh, wait, sorry. You're not allowed to talk about Mitch McConnell or how old he is or how unpopular he is.
Okay.
You
That's-
are allowed to talk about how old Nancy Pelosi is and how unpopular she is, even though
Yeah.
they're about the same age and she's more popular than he is.
Well, you know how it goes with popularity. Well,
Yeah.
They once said Mitch McConnell was popular, and I don't know why they said it, but they did say it, and so now he is. He's popular.
Right. To give you an idea how low Pelosi placed, at least twice as many voters said 7 of the other 9 factors were extremely or very important. Economy, healthcare, immigration, corruption, gun policy, taxes, and Trump. And it's interesting that Trump was not the top thing. Healthcare was the top thing. Economy just
They keep
behind it.
saying
Those are
that.
the only two upper 80% extremely or very important. Immigration in the 70s, we have immigration, corruption, gun policy, and taxes, and that gun policy thing doesn't necessarily work in Republicans' favor these days. So the top 5 out of 6 things, the economy, let's say, it's a good economy, therefore if you want to, you can credit Trump, so let's give him that. And that means that of the top 6 things, 5 out of 6 work against Republicans. President Trump is only 68% extremely or very important. Trade policy just after that. And then way, 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 way down, the Russian investigation at 45% extremely or very important. And then Pelosi at 34. So it's not the thing that's motivating people to vote. And the Russia thing isn't. But then again, Mueller hasn't given his report yet.
All right. Well, can we outsource the report and get it just as we need it, and only if you're interested, via the internet?
It'll be interesting to see whether it in fact comes out before the election. We don't know that.
People would
now,
like to order
just out,
order,
just hot off the presses is an Ipsos poll.
Ipsos factos.
Ipsos factos. So 2018 generic congressional ballot question, Democratic candidate 40, Republican candidate 32, candidate from another political party 4%, will not or do not plan to vote 11, and don't know or refused 13. So that's an 8-point lead. But some of them are just starting to look at likely voters. Most of them are looking at registered voters. And it'll be very interesting this year, given the enthusiasm on the part of the Democratic voters.
Yes.
Enthusiasms.
There they are.
That we'll see whether likely voter, in fact, trends D. It usually trends R, but I don't know about this year.
Oh.
All right. So what are the big stories? The big
let's find
stories are John Brennan's security clearance being yanked.
Yes, right. Forgot.
It has no practical meaning, but it
talk
has
about
a
the
lot of
washing
symbolic
machines.
meaning. It's essentially a president trying to shut up his critics,
Yes. Shut up, you critics.
right?
Could have just done that.
So naturally, Brennan was completely shut up, so he wrote an op-ed in the New York Times about it,
Well, that's a good place to have no one read you.
right? Opinion, John Brennan, President Trump's claims of no collusion are hogwash.
Yes, that's true.
It
He's
goes
right.
through what we know.
And
He
he's
doesn't
a
tell us
bad
anything
guy.
we don't already know. But here's a good one. You may notice that Trump, via the spokesliar Sarah Sanders,
Okay, that one. Yes.
gave a list not only of Brennan but other people she was considering.
Yeah.
Security clearance,
Right.
including Sally Yates
Right.
and other people. But there was a name on there that keeps coming up, and it was such a head scratcher that the fact checker over at the Washington Post decided to write about it. Who is Bruce Orr, and why does Trump keep tweeting about him? OHR.
He does.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna pull the security clearance of people who are traitors, like Brennan
Yeah.
and the other people in the intelligence community,
Right.
and people I don't like at the FBI, and Bruce Orr.
Bruce Orr.
Why
Okay.
is Bruce Orr on that list?
I
I didn't know, so I
ate
looked
the
it up.
last slice of pizza.
Right? President Trump in a tweet, August 14, 2018. Bruce Orr, the Justice Department, with scare quotes around justice. Can you believe he's still there? Is accused of helping disgraced Christopher Steele find dirt on Trump. Orr's wife, Nellie, was in on the act big time. She worked for Fusion GPS on the
that's
fake
Nellie.
dossier.
Okay. I've seen Nelly tweets, and I didn't know what he was doing.
The big story is that the fake news media refuses to report is low-life Christopher Steele's many meetings with Deputy AG Bruce Orr and his beautiful wife Nellie. It was Fusion GPS that hired Steele to write the phony, discredited dossier paid for by Crooked Hillary and the DNC. That was a tweet on August 11th.
I must have been asleep.
So he was an official, and when Christopher Steele started to do work, which
Yes.
was originally, this whole dossier thing was originally paid for by opposition research, Oppo research by Republicans, and then switched over to Democrats.
Right.
And then he started to find out stuff. He became alarmed about what he found out. He wanted to tell somebody. He knew people in the American intelligence community. One of the people he knew was Chris Orr, or Bruce Orr, rather.
Okay.
So that's how Bruce Orr got involved in this.
Okay.
Steele notified Bruce Orr that there's a lot of stuff here that like America needs to know about, and then the rest is history. Even though the initial investigation into what was going on with the Russians started with Papadopoulos getting drunk and blabbing to, I guess,
Yeah. Australians.
Australia. I couldn't remember if it was Australian or Greek diplomats. Get so complicated.
he's-
In any case, that's how Bruce Ornames comes into it. Now, he was reassigned by the Justice Department, I guess in a similar manner to how Peter Strzok was fired.
Yeah.
Just keep it away, keep anything controversial away from what we're doing so it doesn't distract. But that doesn't stop Trump from continuing to go after this guy. We don't even know what he's doing. We don't know what his job is at the FBI currently or the Justice Department currently.
No, I don't know.
And whether he's involved at all in anything that's going on there. That has to do with the Russians. But that doesn't stop Trump.
No. The revocation of the security clearance has been interesting. I don't know how else to say it. And the discussion around it, swirling around it, and the side shows about it, and it's fascinating to say the very least. Although most fascinating, I think, I just now see Garant's Frank Ruta's tweet being retweeted quite a bit. She's got a piece here. They are a compilation, a play in 3 tweets. Have you seen this one? Jennifer Bendry's tweets. I guess, I don't know.
What's it say?
So yesterday. The first one was Paul Ryan laughed off the idea of Trump revoking the security clearances on his political opponent, saying he was just trolling people.
Yes.
And then next up was I have asked Paul Ryan shop for a response to the Brennan news. And finally, update, Paul Ryan's shop declined to comment. And I'm sure by this morning, I'm sure it's like, I haven't seen that. I didn't read that. I don't know what you're talking about.
I've gone out of my way for the last 24 hours spending incredible amounts of time not reading what it is you're trying to ask me about.
Right. Lots of people put that connection together. And I have Dave Weigel's here with the original headline of that Trump is just trolling people. And I guess that was from July 24th. And then yesterday's headline, no, it's been done. He's just had his security clearance revoked. And
a pro tip to Paul Ryan, that dodge isn't working.
Right. Well, he's also going to leave soon. So I guess they're just letting him get away with it for a while.
He's going to be swept out by a wave.
By the way, I was reminded that in this way that this plays out, he's just trolling people. He's just a blowhard. He's threatening. He's not going to really do it. No one would let him. The deep state will stop him, whatever. The institutions will stop him.
You have to take him seriously, but not literally.
Yes, right. So I just wanted to remind everybody, he does threaten to in the interest of ideological consistency, to punish, to jail women who have abortions. So if you're wondering, well, is he really just trolling
there's
women?
Also an article, there's also an article in the papers
you.
these days about Mattis and the Defense Department and how they're cracking down and being nasty to reporters who report bad things. I mean, there really are enemies lists in the Trump administration, and they are acting on them.
Right, they are
so
written in crayon,
it's important to take him
work.
literally because he doesn't do nuance.
Yeah. And he believes, I think that when they brought this to him again, he may have forgotten that he threatened to do this. And I don't know. I'd be curious to know whether he remembered on his own and said, that's it, or whether that's the sort of thing that Stephen Miller carries to him and says, you would look strong by following through on this.
No, you would distract from Omarosa if you would do this.
I liked your
because
tweet
you
yesterday.
planned on doing this back on the 23rd, and we had this in a bag of distractible things.
Right.
Pull something out of the bag. We need a distraction. Well, there's this, so why don't we do this now? Now everybody will talk about it, and they won't talk about Omarosa or Manafort's trial because the jury is deliberating today.
Well,
which
it
is
does
the other
work
big story.
to
We haven't
distract.
covered a lot. You may have. I haven't covered a lot of the Manafort stuff because
I did it all.
I'm not a lawyer, and it's not over yet.
Right. That's true. We still have to wait, although I was intrigued, as everyone was, to learn the other day that the defense did not offer a defense. They simply sat through the prosecution and rested when it was their turn to present the defense.
Right. Although I'm convinced by legal Twitter that was a reasonable thing to do on their part.
It may well have been. There's not a great deal of defense they really had to offer.
Yeah,
And,
first of all, they don't have a defense.
Yeah.
Because it looks like an open and shut case to amateurs like me. Second of all, if you wind up doing any kind of defense, then the jury starts looking at you. Mm-hmm. If you bring any witnesses, you start looking at them and how bad they are. Because who on earth would be a witness for Manafort?
Right, there aren't a lot.
And you don't want to distract from, the whole concept is that the government has the burden of proof. Let them prove it.
Right, and it's something you you can do, and if you're planning on, I mean, a lot of people were speculating, well, he's just waiting for a pardon, and I guess that could be true, but that's not a great strategy. But yeah, there's also, I mean, legally speaking, if you actually maintain that the things that you did aren't crimes, then that's actually an actual strategy. Although if you can't present legal experts to get up there and make the argument that it isn't a crime and never was supposed to be and shouldn't be, then you just kind of sit there and you get ready on appeal to say, yeah, he was wrongly convicted. This isn't a crime. And you have the trial on the pure law question at the appellate stage later on.
Well, since this is just the opening act, I really want them to come to a guilty verdict and then move on.
That would be a fine start. Having a guilty verdict on the books is good.
Because then you have the second Manafort trial, which may have more to do with Russia, and you also put the fear of God into the Trumpies who think that impeachment's a great thing.
Yes, and I also don't mind having appeals taken where the defendant has to show up in a jumpsuit.
Right.
That's a good
thing. While they say that not worry about any of this, of course, there's another article in the Washington Post this morning. Trump's lawyers prepare to fight subpoena all the way to the Supreme Court.
Aha. See?
There's nothing there. And by the way, we'll fight the subpoena. By the way, is Kavanaugh on the court yet?
Nope, not yet.
Hurry it up, because we have the subpoena thing coming.
Right. Well, if you don't look into his record, then it'll move a lot faster. Or at least it certainly could. And it might. Right. Might go just like that.
So, as our break comes up, and now that I'm on Skype, I can hear the music.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. We'll look at some more in-depth stories, maybe some thought pieces after the break.
Well, that's good. Someone should be doing some thinking, and I'm glad our professional class is up to it. Right. Yeah. If you did some thinking yesterday or early this morning, let us know, and we'll borrow that for the rest of the show.
Absolutely.
Okay. We'll be back in just 2 minutes. We could take longer if you like, but that's when the music will end. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Well, now we can talk about it because we're back on the air. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We've been deciding, it's all been decided in a smoke-filled room while you were listening to commercials for us, I guess. But we've decided your immediate future in radio. We'll tell you what we were going to tell you, and there's no way you can stop us, even if you tweet to us and tell us what you'd rather hear about, in which case we'll talk about that later.
Right. Well, it's too late. We're going to talk about what we're going to talk about.
This is the thing. Are we ready?
Ready. I was looking at this Joshua Green tweet.
Joshua Green.
Joshua Green.
We're coming for you, Green.
Is a CNN political analyst.
That guy.
And he noted on Bloomberg this John McCormick piece, which looks at a GOP mega donor with a Midas touch, or you might call it a negative Midas touch, because he's just fantastic at picking losers.
Excellent. Who is this
I don't know the pronunciation of his name, Richard Uihlein. Uihlein.
I see that name a lot. I never say it.
Right? Not to be confused with Paul Nehlen, who's the Nazi who lost the primary to replace Paul Ryan. But Richard Uihlein has amassed one of the worst track records among mega donors in recent years, spending $29 million on folks from Roy Moore to Kevin Nicholson, who just lost a primary for Senate. That was one of the runaway from Trump people.
Yeah, where is this guy?
And his latest loss was in Tuesday's U.S. Senate Republican primary in Wisconsin. Uihlein, the top individual donor in the Wisconsin race, heavily financed most of the outside groups that spent $10 million backing Kevin Nicholson, a businessman and Marine Corps veteran. State Senator Leah Volkmir, we talked about this on the show yesterday, beat Nicholson and will face incumbent Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin in November, and then she'll lose. Volkmir, I edit that part, but it's true. Volkmir had her own big donor backing her, roofing supply billionaire Diane Hendricks. Outside groups, so that's how it works these days. It's like an apprenticeship patron kind of thing.
I see.
You find a patron, you become their apprentice.
That's
and then they finance
sugar
you.
daddy, I think they call that relationship.
Outside groups, including these heavily backing groups, spent at least $17.8 million before the primary, but Ulin spent much more heavily than anybody else. And so far this election cycle, he ranks third nationally in contributions. The $29.1 million he's given is just behind $30 million from Sheldon Adelson and the $29.5 million from liberal billionaire Tom Steyer. So, it's funny. Nobody talks about George Soros and Tom Steyer the same way. It's always Soros. It's never Steyer.
He's always the one bankrolling something, blah, blah, blah. Richard Ulian, Melme, whatever the name is. Apparently, they describe him as a packing supply magnate. Thank you. And a descendant of one of the founders of the Schlitz Beer Company, the delicious Schlitz Beer. So that's what happened to all the money that, you might have spent on Schlitz Beer back in the day. His grandson is spending it all on losers, which really, I guess, if we were spending our money on Schlitz Beer, we were doing a lot of the same things. But we were spending much less on the losers, and the losers were us. So I guess there's that. We got beer out of it anyway.
So he was a Scott Walker backer, and I hope he backs Scott Walker and Scott Walker loses.
I hope so. Good luck, and good luck with your last name, whatever that may be. I know what it's like to mispronounce things, and I feel sorry.
So let's talk about one of my favorite topics.
Schleitz.
And that is Democrats in disarray.
Okay. Yes, they're always in disarray.
Right. We gave you the polling yesterday and today. Actually, they're doing quite well. They did well in the primaries on Tuesday. They're leading in a lot of places. There was a recent poll out, which nobody believes, but it was actually a Republican poll, showing Joe Donnelly with a double-digit lead in Indiana. We talked about Joe Manchin and how he's doing much better than the Republicans wanted him to do. There's still tricky races for the Democrats in the Senate.
Okay.
Heidi Heitkamp, for example, Bill Nelson. I think both of those are very close races, too close to call. So you might say that the incumbents there are in trouble. But we'll see what happens if and when there actually is a non-red wave. But nonetheless, because the generic ballots are looking so good, and because it's clear, as I mentioned to you, that at least in one of them, looking at likely voters, you have an 8-point generic ballot lead unless you frame it as, well, the Democrats are against Trump, and then it shoots to 13 points, right? So the whole thing there is that you want to be against Trump, but for those who say, yeah, well, you have to be for something, the leading thing, as we talked about in the other polling, was that healthcare leads the field, and the Democrats have a lead on the Republicans when it comes to healthcare, since Republicans are trying to take yours away and Democrats are trying to give it to more people. So that's the background, and naturally, that leads to the New York Times writing, Democrats discard Washington platform in bid for House control. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, how local stuff matters, except to the New York Times, where only national things matter. And this whole story here about how the Democrats are lacking a contract for America kind of skips the point that the contract for America had almost nothing to do with Republicans winning that year.
Oh, well, yeah.
That was something that Newt Gingrich wanted to take credit for, but there was a whole lot of other outside forces happening, just like there are this year.
Yeah. And he did drive a lot of those things. But, yeah, I guess the contract wasn't – most people probably did not care.
Most people didn't know what it was.
Right.
Although
that's part of the
But then you
too.
get the claim afterwards. No, it was this because it was my leadership that did this.
Yes.
Democratic mistakes had nothing to do with it.
All that most people really wanted to know was that there was a thing called that, and that sounds pretty good because contracts are good, and America is also something people are into. So, sounds good. I'll take it. I don't care what's in it. And also, you were able to say, it's stuff like term limits. Yeah, I love those. All right. It was a dumb list.
Right.
But that didn't matter to people.
So Dinesh D'Souza, who is being obnoxious on Twitter, and the funny thing is Kevin Kruse, the historian, keeps taking him to the woodshed on this. So Jeet here has an article about this, and that's where I noticed this contract with America stuff coming up. Dinesh D'Souza gets a history lesson on Twitter. D'Souza's made a specialty of highlighting the undeniable racism of the 60s Democratic Party as a way to tar the current party. His argument ignore the way the two political parties switched positions on civil rights in the 60s. Yes. On Monday, D'Souza put up a challenge to his critics. Let's see a list of the 200 or so racist Dixiecrats who switched parties and became Republicans. Put up or shut up. Princeton historian Kevin Kruse, a scholar who's made good use of Twitter as a forum to popularize academic knowledge, took D'Souza up on the request and said, sure, let's do this. As I've noted before, focusing solely on Southern Democratic politicians who officially switched parties intentionally misses the thrust of the party realignment on matters of race and civil rights, because you have to look at voters and how they voted, not just who the figures in the party were.
Switched. I knew it. Somebody switched.
But sure, let's ignore what scholars have written on this and meet this question on D'Souza's own chosen ground, racist Southern Democratic politicians. 200 politicians didn't switch. That's a laughably high bar, but there were plenty. There's Strom Thurmond, and before Thurmond, John Tower, and state legislatures. And this isn't what historians stress in party realignment, but it happened, and there's a book on it, of course, Racial Realignment, by Eric Schickler. For some examples, he gives South Carolina Representative Arthur Ravenel Jr. and a bunch of other names you may or may not have heard of at the state level. And Kruse's entire Twitter thread is an expert class in how to marshal scholarly evidence in a popular debate. It's worth reading from start to finish. The only problem is D'Souza's unteachable. This guy, Kevin Kruse, raises obscure quibbles on Twitter, but is too wimpy to publicly debate me.
Oh, boy, another debate.
Kevin Kruse says, obscure quibbles, also known as evidence that refutes my idiotic claims.
Yeah, I sometimes wonder whether Kevin's wasting his time, but we all
he enjoys it. You know, it's punching down, but he enjoys it.
That's okay. I mean, everybody should have a hobby.
Well, the point is you get to read Kevin's tweets and then you learn stuff.
Right.
And so, it's for those of us who actually lived through the 60s, we see a lot of revisionist stuff there all the time. I mean, probably one of the more popular versions of that is we need to go back to a golden age when everybody got along, like the 1960s.
I don't know if I see
now
it
it's just so disruptive. Everybody's so mean to each other.
Yes. Well, I did say, usually the people are maybe things have changed now that we've moved on in time. People are pointing at the 60s instead of the 50s. The 50s was always the golden era that I recall people talking about, though we did relatively recently, for old people like us.
The problem is the aging population means nobody remembers the 50s.
Yeah,
so you have to do the 60s. Because when I was a kid, this is how it was so wonderful.
But there wasn't there the thing about how protest was so civil in the 60s?
Yeah, right. Like at Kent State, where people got shot.
Yeah. But
the funny thing is, a lot of those were bystanders.
Yes. Well, that's one of it's a totally separate topic, but it's one of the problems with dumb projectiles.
So many. Yeah.
So that's why we need smart guys.
It's always good to I'm a history fan, and it's good to remember history. It's not that you repeat it, but history does rhyme.
Yes. Don't watch the American History Channel though. That Nazi guy hates that one.
Okay.
You see, I think you have that story. That's the what's his name who organized Unite the Right and
Kessler.
Now lives in his parents' basement.
Yeah, until he got thrown out of the basement.
Yes, I think that's in your.
He was on a live chat, I guess, with another Nazi who was complaining he'd have to sell his boat because he's out of money, and then Jason Kessler, I think his name is, or something like that. So his father came in and said, "Get out of here." Yeah,
there was a big fight. Get out of my room. I thought it was originally, I read it as, I thought he was in his room and his dad came in to say, take out the trash or something. And it was one of those, Dad, get out of my room. I'm live streaming. Pretty close, though. It's almost the same thing. He actually, I guess, was live streaming from his dad's room, which is a weird thing in itself. I suppose that maybe he's living at home now because he's broke.
Yeah.
And,
these things happen to Nazis.
Sure, it does. It's hard to get a job and keep it when the rest of the
just
country
like when
wants
Alex
you out.
Jones loses his radio station.
Right. I'm wondering whether
all of his platforms that he likes to talk about.
I'm wondering whether his room at home is like still decorated from when he was a kid, and there's like, I don't know, maybe like Nintendo Mario Kart posters on the wall or something. He didn't want people to see that. Because who goes into their parents' room to do the live stream? That's
people who are students of the Glenn Beck School of Empire Building.
I guess so. I mean, I don't even go into the bedroom to do our live stream. I do mine right here in the kitchen.
Right. I mean, we need a whole, radio show. We need a whole show that we do about whatever happened to.
Yeah. Well, that'd be a popular weekend item. I'm not doing it because I've had enough by the time.
Whatever happened to those weekend shows we did?
Yeah, well, we did start that way. All the ideas that are on the shelf. Well, one day when who's the guy who's not Soros, who's bankrolling everything? Call
Tom
that
Steyer.
guy. Yeah. All right. Hey, how about a radio show that gets paid for? That would be good, huh? Huh?
Right.
Huh?
Tom Steyer
Radio.
actually is kind of a bifurcated donor. He has a lot of money that goes to environmental issues.
That's nice.
And then he has stuff that goes into political issues.
That's also nice.
And I think his shop is Next Gen, so people want to Google that and learn a little bit more about that. So
well, like Elon Musk,
interesting fellow.
If you wake up rich, your ideas are awesome.
Absolutely. Otherwise, and if you're crazy, or a complete loon, or a crank, but you have money,
yes,
then you're eccentric.
Right. That's exactly it. If you put all of your belongings in a shopping cart, you're a lunatic. If you put all your money in a shopping cart, you are eccentric.
You're eccentric.
Right.
Absolutely.
I'm going to do that. I have a very small shopping cart.
So I'm going to leave you with this article because it'll probably annoy you. I know it'll annoy Armando.
Oh, good.
It's called Our Blind Spots Often Hide the Truth About America. In the New York Times by Sarah Smarsh.
I don't have any blind
spots. Author of the forthcoming Heartland, a memoir of working hard and being broke in the richest country on earth.
Okay.
And this was an op-ed about Trump country.
Oh, good. There's a huge gap in that.
Yeah, because we never talk about that.
All right.
But I think she makes an interesting point.
Oh, no.
And she gives examples of readers who have written back about some of this stuff.
Stupid people who say things.
Mary V. Virginia writes back, I had a conversation last week with a woman I had recently met. We're talking about the importance of supporting women in all types of roles, professional chefs, doctors. She's an ER physician. And throughout all levels of society, including politics, I casually mentioned how cool I thought it was that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had won her race. And my companion's demeanor immediately changed, and she flatly replied, as a Christian and a capitalist, I have absolutely no interest in anything that socialist has to say.
I didn't even get to the second part. I had a heart attack as a Christian and a capitalist. Is that something you say these days?
The speed in which this happened was both startling and disturbing. Our friendly conversation was wiped out in a matter of seconds by her swift application of labels, her own self-identification, and to Ms. Ocasio-Cortez. So the question the Times posted to this author is, to what extent do labels prevent productive dialogue? And she gives her own examples. I mean, it's just so interesting because nobody really knows what socialist means anymore to a younger generation. There's nothing bad about being a socialist.
Right. It's like
it's actually more popular than capitalist. Older people don't understand this and think that it's such a pejorative that if you say it, you're going to melt away like the Wicked Witch who got water poured on her, but that's not how it works.
Right.
And so it's just an interesting thing. And she just talks about the fact how dangerous labels are. And she gives an example being from a red state, and this is the part I liked.
Okay.
Envisioning a red state as a field of deplorables leads some self-righteous liberals to say these states get what they deserve, as though everyone suffering for lack of Medicaid expansion voted for their conservative state officials, as though everyone even gets to vote. In most states, the losing political party receives 30 to 40% of the vote, and those millions of people, along with the disenfranchised, are no more represented by their state administrations than liberals nationally are represented by our current president.
Sure.
So calling their home Trump country, a childish misnomer. I'm reminded of all the people we know from places, for example, like Kansas, who blog at Daily Kos and are
sure.
progressive commentators and so on and so forth. And just because you live in a certain place doesn't mean you are that place.
Yes.
And people do make that mistake. And I'm glad that she's, bringing it to people's attention.
Who makes
That's
that
not the same
mistake?
thing as saying, we have to talk to more Trump voters in West Virginia.
Yeah.
It's a different thing altogether.
Oh.
There might be people in West Virginia who didn't vote for him.
Right. And they should...
We can't find them, but,
Yeah, I was going to say, the person you need to talk
enough.
to is the newspaper you've just published in.
Yeah.
But, newspapers are people, my friend.
Right. And then another fellow, Leonard Ray from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, makes the point. I live in an area you might describe as Trump country.
Yeah.
But to be honest, most of the white people I know don't have any African-American neighbors.
True.
Occasional coworkers, but many times not even that.
Right.
I'm not sure there's much opportunity to be, in a personal sense, mad at coworkers or neighbors of color. And then she talks about her own father and how he loved the individuals he worked with, but as a group was pretty racist.
Yeah.
And how that happens. And just, makes the point that when you actually work with people and you get up close with them, it's a lot harder to be racist. But that doesn't preclude you from having those sorts of notions. And so,
Why? Donald Trump himself does that.
That's why the old Stephen Colbert joke about, I have a black friend is so salient.
Yes.
Because people say that all the time. It's got nothing to do with whether you're racist or not.
Well, that's part of the reason they love Trump so much. He's just like them. He says these things about people, and then when he is either confronted with one or knows one personally or finds a rich one or one shows up with a pro-Trump sign at an event, he likes that one.
Right.
That's my African-American.
Another aspect of this that the Times talks about with her are white racial grievances deciding factors for higher earning Trump supporters as well, just more easily hidden because they're voting for tax cuts, they say.
Uh-huh.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And she says, well, I agree that motivations among different income brackets of white Trump voters surely differ, but only in the version of power they seek to preserve. Ultimately, though it might be harder to see in one group or another, they all reap both racial and economic advantage.
Uh-huh.
But the response is misplaced. You seem to be responding, as did a number of commenters, as though I wrote a piece about Trump voters, a group that has, by my estimation, enjoyed too much attention. I wrote instead about people who live in Trump country, and she's just making the point it's not the same.
Thank God for the New York Times. Otherwise, I would never have read that.
Well, you probably wouldn't have read it anyway, but I insisted on reading it to you.
Yeah, right. That's what I mean. Thank God you subscribe to the New York Times. What did I say?
Exactly.
I think that's what I mean.
But again, I think it's important. The dissonance between my story and a large portion of the reaction proves the point of my piece that the dominant narrative about much of our country is inaccurate and willfully blind. So people who don't want to listen and say, but, I'm talking about most of you who live here, not you personally, but just like most of you who live there who looked at the vote. Okay, fine. Then you're not talking about me. Let's just make that clear.
Yes, but we're not talking about anything because let's be clear, even when you're talking about me, sometimes I change my mind about things, and we should have a whole article about that.
Well, there are people that change their mind.
That's true, and I demand it.
And so, it's again,
I don't know.
I think it's again emphasizing why it's worthwhile having dialogue with people who at least are willing to listen. It's a waste of time to talk to Trump rally voters,
but not in general. Just individually.
But not the people who live in their state.
Right.
I would like to reach people in Florida. I would like them to vote for Bill Nelson and not Rick Scott. But I would like Florida to not necessarily support Trump, but there are rally voters in Florida that just you can't talk to.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, that's absolutely true, and it happens all the time that we draw lines in places because that's kind of what we do as human beings. We're interested in drawing lines and having some mechanism of sorting things. Sorting things seems to be a very high human priority.
Right. So well,
can't escape that.
As you know, there's two groups of people. There's lumpers and splitters.
Yeah.
Right. There's people who lump everybody together, and people who insist on splitting everything apart.
Right.
And these are often worth arguing about.
I am going to write an op-ed. I'm going to talk to people who can't make up their mind whether they're lumpers or splitters.
Well, you lumpers call everybody in Trump country in the red states the same.
Yeah, you love doing that.
And we splitters
look
at who's different, who's not different. And by the way, before I finish my segment and get off the air,
it's the same thing.
New breaking news here. Omarosa will be live at 1 p.m. on MSNBC with a new secret recording.
You were right.
I predicted that yesterday.
You did in a fantastic tweet. which I
said,
lost.
because
have it here
Trump
somewhere.
says, we got to distract from this Omarosa stuff. Let's do, I know, we'll take Brennan's security clearance away. And Omarosa said, well, let me drop my new tape.
Yeah, what else have I got here in this bag? Should be cool. All right, well, 1 o'clock. She's really doing it. I mean, she knows the game. Calling
She knows
a press
the game,
conference
and
going to
people
happen
will
at
put her
1.
on, right? And
We're
she's
all gonna
already
guess what
she's
it
already
is.
brought some receipts, so now she's claiming she has more receipts.
Terrific. And
Are they any good?
you
I don't know, but at
right.
least she's diverting the news again.
Right, and it's a good thing to bring the receipts. It's always otherwise they'll accuse you of shoplifting.
Right, exactly.
And they're going to do that anyway, quite honestly.
Okay.
She may be arrested before 1 o'clock.
And that's the news today. And if you don't like the news, make some of your own.
Right.
This is Greg Larkin speaking with my friend David
Wake up.
Woolman via Skype again, which is always nice.
Good
Take
job,
care,
Skype.
and I'll talk to you on Monday. We'll see what kind of platform we need at that point. And
Yes.
how many
And,
other technological things all of a sudden stop working.
We'll see which country hacks you next.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you. You do the same. I will write an article about some people who think we should take care and others who live next door to them who think we should not. I'm a little fascinated by this. It's kind of an interesting thing. It's almost in parallel to that one thing I hinted at earlier in the show, and maybe we'll get to it just for a few minutes, the Elon Musk thing. It's beginning to strike me, and maybe I just sort of need to do some like relaxation exercises and get over it. But it seems to me like everything I'm reading this morning, I can't believe I'm reading a big long opinion piece about somebody who's got a book coming out that says not all the people in a town are the same. Yeah, I mean, all right. And I'm glad that's being printed, especially in the New York Times, where you might have lost that narrative if all you did was read the stuff they were providing you about how everybody is the same in Trump country. But, well, all right. So it's not infuriating. It's just a little bit puzzling. And now I guess I might as well deliver on the Atrios thing, because we have a couple minutes before the next break. And we'll do it this way. I mentioned to you earlier that he was just tweeting, and in his intriguing way, where Atrios just drops those hints. Oh dear, Elon Musk has had another stupid idea on this, and the headline at the blog side of it is, "Oh dear, Elon has found another con." Just to give you some idea of what grabs me in the morning, and the sorts of things that I guess these things do sort of semi-infuriate me. I try not to let them get to me too much because it's just the way it is. But when you're a billionaire, everything's a good idea. Everybody just tells you you're awesome, and it's not that nobody says your ideas are stupid. It's that when they do, you feel like you can safely ignore them. And that can't be right, because if I was not this smart and this brilliant and my ideas weren't so awesome, I wouldn't be a billionaire, and so therefore, duh, in your face, which is a little bit, prosperity gospel-ish, and I guess makes it less puzzling that Elon Musk, who could be going his own way on everything, is still not really entirely out of the Trump orbit. Anyway, here's the deal. The way Atrios writes it up, just need to keep getting gullible local officials to throw money at you for a study. No good way to get to Dodger Stadium in L.A. So how about Elon Musk here? Remember, low-capacity cars on sleds. They're good for everything. What in the hell could they possibly mean here? Here, a report from, I guess, the latest study from The Boring Company, which I do think is a hilarious name for Elon Musk's company, which purports to be in the business of boring out gigantic underground tunnels, although I don't know whether they're actually doing any of them for anyone else. They want to be in that business, but no one is buying gigantic underground tunnels, I guess. Surprise. But they are definitely in that business anyway, and they do dig giant tunnels underneath the ground now on their own account so that they can demonstrate to cities that you could give us taxpayer money and we could dig these tunnels. The Boring Company is proposing to build Dugout Loop, a zero-emissions, high-speed underground public transportation system from the Los Feliz, East Hollywood, or Rampart Village neighborhoods, the western terminus, to Dodger Stadium in the city of Los Angeles. He says, let's take a look, and links to the article or the publication, the release, I guess, from the Boring Company. The route is 3.6 miles. The Loop is a zero-emissions, high-speed underground public transportation system in which passengers are transported on autonomous electric skates, whatever the hell that is, traveling at 125 to 150 miles per hour. This is a 3-mile loop. Are you sure that you can, A, get up to that speed, B, do you want to travel at that speed, C, are there seat belts? I don't know. Electric skates, whatever they are, will carry between 8 and 16 passengers. Just whatever. They just will. Atria says, I highly doubt they'll travel this fast, but the real point is that it doesn't matter. Boarding is the real bottleneck for things like this. Yeah. Picture the taxi line at the airport. Or the line for the roller coaster. It doesn't really matter, in other words, how fast the thing goes. That's what you get when you can only board a dozen people at a time. The line is going to be long, Brant, referring to the old dogs thing from baseball. Never mind. Oh, sorry. Line? No, there will be an app for that, which will totally solve this problem. To which he laughs out loud. Back to the release. Initially, riders will be able to reserve times and purchase dugout loop tickets in advance, similar to booking seats at a movie theater via a mobile app, over the phone, or in person, e.g., 5:45 p.m. PT dugout loop ticket. That's how you will order the thing, you see. Because there's an app, there won't be a line because it's just like going to the movies, except, as he points out, remember, this is primarily a baseball game transportation device. So, what time would you like to go to the baseball game? Oh, the same time as everybody else, the time it starts, or perhaps immediately beforehand. And of course, yes, you could stagger arrivals, but everybody wants to leave at the same time, so hey, enjoy the line. But what a high-tech line it will be. The release also says initially Dugout Loop will be limited to approximately 1,400 people per event. By the way, that's approximately 2.5% of stadium capacity. Lots more to say about this one. Not a whole lot more to say about it, but just I will sum it up this way. Atrios has it on the nose. This is what this guy does. It's what the Boring Company does. So he just thinks he can apply it to any place he encounters traffic, and that's not true. Help us. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Just saw sort of a funny little animated GIF circulating, another one of those signing ceremony ones where Trump signs this thing and he shows off what's in the folder, and somebody clever photoshops what's in the folder so that he looks really dumb. And I noticed it's Judy Vincent has retweeted this one back into our timeline. Hi, Judy. How's it going? I didn't think you'd be awake yet, but maybe you're traveling. I don't know, but thanks for the fun gift this morning. Hey, my son's working on an Eagle Scout project, Judy. And if you and all of your scouts would like to fly from Hawaii over here to Virginia to help us work on it, that would be great. Bring your tools. Yeah, my life has, of course, been turned upside down because my son's got a big project. That's kind of the way things go with kids and projects, even Eagle Scout projects. Pretty much suck in everybody around you. But good things are being done for the community. Just wanted to say that. Okay, speaking of good things for the community, do you want to hear the end? There's not that much more. It's Atrios. He never blogs long form. I want to hear the rest of this nonsense from Elon Musk. Sure. Okay. Well, Atrios was just saying the last snippet here that it's the second to last snippet that he takes from the Boring Company's release. Initially, Dugout Loop would be, as I said, limited to approximately 1,400 people, approximately 2.5% of stadium capacity per event. Now, I skipped over the per event part, but he picks up on it and says, I love how it doesn't even say per hour, but per event, 1,400 people per event, which probably includes at least a 2-hour window, just guessing. One real subway train can easily carry 1,000 people, board them all quickly, and you can run one every 2 minutes. So one attraction to these sleds, whatever they might be, or skates as they put them, right, is the weird idea that if you have lower capacity, then you can run them more often. But headways aren't really a technical constraint of subway systems. Any modern subway system can run 24 trains per hour easy, and plenty do 32. At that point, it's the boarding time that makes running them more often be impractical. Even our pretty antiquated trolley system in Philly, where he lives, runs through the tunnel with a less than 3-minute headways per peak, so they can carry about 70 people per train. One more snippet then from the release. Oh my goodness, every time I scroll there's two. Okay. Electric skates, by the way, what are they? Well, they're zero emission vehicles, which if you haven't invented them, you can make them whatever you want. My electric skates are negative emission vehicles. They suck in emissions from other vehicles, which are not in the loop with them. But if they were, they would suck in their emissions and power, okay, sure. They're zero emissions. There are such things, zero emission vehicles, but just what the hell? Let's just assume they're those. Electric skates are zero-emission vehicles and thus do not output hazardous gases like internal combustion cars do. I know. That's what zero emissions means. Wow, electric-powered underground vehicles. What will Elon think of next? Of course, this is just like when Google says, or Uber says, instead of ride-sharing using cars that people own privately but aren't putting to use at the moment, which is, of course, the basis of like the washing machine thing that we started the show with. Why, think about all the unused capacity of washing machines when you buy them and all the time you're not doing wash, that machine could be working. What if people could share access to it? And just like Uber, it's Uber, but for laundry. Not in the sense that it picks up and delivers the laundry to you, which is also a great idea and a great business model. And another thing we'll talk about in a minute. But, what if people could use your washing machine capacity? Well, they can't because it's in my house. What if it wasn't? Well, then how would I get my laundry to it? Shut up. Have some juice from my juicera. Okay, you make a good point. So, yeah, wow, electric-powered underground vehicles. What will Elon think of next? That's called a subway. Just like when Uber then says what we'll do instead of using the cars is what if instead we could make it so that all the people who were going to the same place, rather than riding in separate cars, they all gathered in one spot because the app would connect them and say, hey, you and 25 other people are trying to go to, let's say, I don't know, Dodger Stadium. Or for that matter, the Google campus, right? And you're all leaving from downtown San Francisco, which is where you would be leaving from if you were going to the Google campus, not Dodger Stadium, which is in Los Angeles. You have a long way ahead of you if you're leaving from San Francisco and going to Dodger Stadium. But what if the underground vehicles were in a 1,000-mile loop and went 1 billion miles an hour? Well, then you could go to Dodger Stadium. True. But in other words, there was a time there when Uber was saying, why don't we have the app say, if you and a bunch of other people are all traveling to the same destination from more or less the same area, what if the app could connect you and tell you where to meet so that a larger vehicle that could seat all of you could pick you all up at that one location and take you to your common destination, which people pretty quickly were able to point out that is called a bus. And we already have those. And the reason you invented Uber is because there were people with enough money who also thought buses were icky that you could drive in somebody else's car and make money with that somehow. And, the idea that you would get them all on a bus, and I mean, that was actually posed to them. And they were like, but this would be an upscale, nice bus, as opposed to the icky cars that you're getting in, which you don't know how people are keeping them, but now they're keeping them cleaner because they want to be professional or whatever. I don't know. The whole idea was kind of dumb. And here again, like, how about if we dig underground tunnels and we put electric vehicles in them and whatever. And so for some reason we decide let's make them smaller, and that way we'd be able to move more people more quickly. How so? I don't really know. It's just sort of one of those assumptions that if they were smaller, we could board them more quickly because you run out of capacity sooner and you move it out of the station. But again, if your station's big and wide and long and has a long platform and people can stand all over it and there's lots of doors to your train, well then, what do you really need to change? And the answer might be we need more advertising space inside of it, and it has to be new because subway stuff is icky and old, whereas something that's cool and new and you use your phone for, and by the way, good luck using the phone underground, but I guess you can install repeaters underground now, and so you can make it so you can use your phone in the subways these days, but that's just an added expense. But why would you even need to use it? You're making a 3.5 mile trip, or I guess even half that, 1.5 mile trip, since it's a loop, at 125 miles an hour. So would they really put, Wi-Fi down there? Well, they probably should, because you'll be waiting in line to get onto your skate and go 5 seconds to Dodger Stadium. Anyway, there we are. So, wow, underground electric-powered vehicles. What will Elon think of next? And the answer is rockets that go into, space. The fares are not finalized. The last snippet from the release says, fares are not finalized, but will cost around $1. Sure they will, of course. Their own projections put it at 250,000 riders per year, Atrio says. Let's say each does a round trip, so 500,000 total. Time for some math. All that grad school must have been good for something. Let's see if I remember how to do this. Oh, yes. $500,000 rides times $1 equals $500,000. Sure, most transit systems are subsidized, but, where do we meet the $1 billion price tag on this one? I don't know. I just thought it was one of those things that file it under don't bother getting out of bed this morning, everybody. All the ideas have been had. A rich guy had another one. It's the same one you had. It's the same one you use now and hate. But this time it will cost perhaps more money, perhaps less money, but it will be, I don't know, underground and zero emissions, and there's an app. So what else do you need to know? Now, a good way of doing this and saving money would be make a subway app and say the subway says a train's coming, and so it will be, because you're just really scraping the data from the subway system's internal computers that know what the schedule is, but it's presented to you on your phone along with a little pop-up ad that maybe brings you fun links from Taboola and Outbrain, and you'll want to see what happens next because it'll shock you, and therefore it's all profitable. Or maybe the opposite of that, not profitable at all, but has a $10 trillion market valuation, and you're not allowed to invest in it because you're too dumb and poor. There you go. So, like I said, add that to the file. What was I thinking of? Oh, yeah, the one other thing. The reinvention of the bus thing had reminded me. One of the new hot things, and I told you I was very interested in making up some sort of parody account where you could come up with Internet of Things, web-enabled stuff that really has no business being web-enabled. And I didn't want to say it because I was, it was early in the show, and you know how it is with the morning things, and I don't like the things you have to describe in radio allowable terms because you fake that you're on the radio. Make it difficult to describe. But Michael Musson knew exactly what I was talking about. I skipped over to the ice cream example. It was a little bit more pleasant, but the one I really initially was thinking of was the one he came up with. Internet-enabled just-in-time toilet paper delivery. Right? I mean, and that one always struck me as the most fantastic one, not only because, well, it's unpleasant, but, toilet paper, that's toilet humor. Toilet humor is, by definition, funny. So that would be the way to go with that one. But the thing I really loved about just-in-time internet delivery of toilet paper was, one, you would never want to depend on that, and two, you could never receive the delivery because you can't leave the bathroom. So even if they actually managed to somehow materialize at your front door with a package of toilet paper on demand, you really would have had to think of this earlier. On the other hand, if you have a smart web-enabled toilet paper holder, it could think of it for you by weighing the bar. If there's not enough toilet paper on the roll by weight, the web-enabled toilet paper roll holder would contact your supplier and let them know that you were low on toilet paper, unless, of course, you actually had some on one of those, toilet paper roll racks that, hold spare rolls for later, or have a cabinet where you keep them. But then you would only have to web enable that too, to weigh the contents, and or possibly scan barcodes if you're putting intact packages in there. And it too could order a thing. Now, if they're in conflict or one of them gets hacked, God forbid your toilet paper roll holder gets hacked by the Russians, and they're like, he doesn't want Charmin. He wants, I don't know, maybe a low-grade scratchy kind of toilet paper. Or if you have specific preferences, I love Charmin, but I don't like the ultra thick. I like the ultra soft. And oh my God, the Russians have hacked me and sent the ultra thick, which is terrible. And, my day is ruined. Or let's say you use something other than toilet paper. I don't know. Clearly, it's one of those things that's not going to work out. And like I said, unless you anticipate, even if the delivery guy shows up when you need him, when you discover that you need him, right? And ding dong, the toilet paper's here, but I am stuck in the bathroom with no toilet paper. How do I just leave it outside the door? Okay. No, outside the bathroom door. I can't get to the bathroom door. Unless, of course, you have the Amazon key thing, right? You could do that. Right? They could use the Amazon key entry system where they code in and they come in and they just put the toilet paper outside the bathroom door. You'd have to tell them which bathroom you were in, but whatever. And even if they guessed wrong at that point, once they left, assuming no one else is home, you could probably make your way. It's a bad idea is what I'm saying. Now, Scott Anderson has a solution for this one, he tells me. 3D printed toilet paper. 4 minutes per sheet, but the point is, it's 4 minutes well spent if you're trapped, right? All you have to do is put the 3D printer in your bathroom and don't run out of 3D printing material, whatever it is that you would need to make 3D. I mean, it's a little rough, the plastic stuff, but, in a pinch, no pun intended, I guess, it would do the trick. The problem, of course, is making room for a 3D printer in, your small bathroom. And, it's spaces at a premium as it is. But I guess you can get rid of the toilet paper holder or the cabinet that you keep spare rolls. It's going to work out. We're going to get there. We're going to get there, people. But one of the by the time that was up and running, I saw that America had moved on to a different genre of Internet of Things. And it was, I think of it as a continuation of another interesting American trend. I think the original American premiumization trend, I think, was the one that went, let's take childhood simplicity and F it up. We'll dress it up with premiumization and sell it that way. Indulgences, childhood indulgences. By my recollection, and I'm sure I'm missing something, it started with ice cream. The idea of the childhood treat that everybody loved and maybe never really gave up, even though they grew to adulthood. And when we realized in the go Reagan years that too many people had too much disposable income in too many East Coast and perhaps a few West Coast cities, and we need to take that from them, we decided the way to do it. Everyone still loves ice cream, regardless of how stupid or childish it is. And so instead of going in the then new direction in ice cream, making it more childish, Superman ice cream, cookies and cream ice cream later with the mix-ins. Actually, that's sort of more of the part of the premiumization trend. But they made very colorful, very sugary ice creams with bubble gum in it or whatever, designed to appeal to the ice cream market. That's kids. And adults would just say, well, I love my simple pleasures, vanilla chocolate, coffee, perhaps, ice cream, strawberry, and I'll just have it as a guilty pleasure. But at least it's cheap. And then Haagen-Dazs, maybe, among the first, basically said, what if we made it with good ingredients instead of crap and charged lots of money, and then kids wouldn't be able to afford it, nor would they be able to appreciate it in the first place anyway. Like Peak Friends being extraordinarily serious cookies, or Toffifee being too good for kids, our ice cream will be too good for them too, except that will also have kid-friendly flavors, so you can bring your kid there and spend too much money on that one too, because who wants to go to 2 ice cream stores to satisfy the family? And it went from there. And, for a long time it stayed parked in ice cream. Ben & Jerry's comes next, and the mix-in craze, and now ice cream is thoroughly premiumized. Gonna get it at your grocery store, Dove bars, later Magnum, whatever. The idea is to give you an expensive version of the embarrassingly childlike indulgence. And then it spread from there eventually into everything else. The cupcake craze, Cake Boss, whatever it is. Everything got premiumized, and it got worse and worse and worse. And New York City, of course, the hub of everything. But pizza got premiumized. First it was like, let's make it terrible, disgusting, and crappy, but deliverable. That was the hot thing. And then it was like, let's premiumize it. And then the delivery people started to get into the game, and they did their best to premiumize with the garbage that they had to start with. And so you got stuffed crust pizza. It was the best thing they could come up with. But you get the idea. So cupcakes, lollipops got premiumized. Everything eventually got premiumized. And it was a huge thing. Then the trend sort of, I think, morphed a little bit into, what if we took, and I don't know if this was the motivation, but what if we took, it came out this way, took old ideas that people abandoned a long time ago in the go-go 80s, or sometimes much earlier, when things began to, when it was still a craze to say, we're going to be modern about that. That was the terminology. So really 60s moving into the 70s. The modern housewife, as they love to say, which wasn't a very modern thing to say, or whatever, really wants convenience, et cetera, et cetera. And interesting. So the trend was both modern, convenience, the rise of the supermarket, and of course, into the 1980s, or beginning with the early 80s, we want to be able to lay people off. We don't want to. We stop employing people if we can. That's a cost center. Fire all the people who do this stuff that makes the business personable and friendly. I'm thinking here of now, you can now sign up and online order your groceries. And some places they will bag them up and put them aside for you, so you only need to pull your car up and they'll load them right in your car. And some places they will deliver them to your house in an hour. Now, I know people love to do their own shopping when it comes to produce, but we have professional shoppers now who will shop, and they want to please you. And if you don't get good produce, you'll get you get 15% off your next order, whatever. But now you can do this stuff and order your groceries on the internet and either have them bagged for you and they'll charge your credit card, or they will even deliver them to your house, which is the way it used to be, but then we abandoned it for like 20 or 30 years, delivering the groceries. You got the grocery boy, the clerk at the store, the new hire, the high school kid working there part-time will bag up your groceries, charge it to my account. You would say, oh, so old-fashioned, right? You're running a tab at the grocery store? That's crazy. Think of all the administrative headache for the poor grocer, right? Well, now charge my credit card. Someone else takes care of the account, but you're still putting it on your account, putting it on your tab, and then have the local high school kid deliver it. No, load it onto the Peapod truck, and they'll bring it to your house and drop it right at your door. An old-fashioned idea made new again because app. Same thing. And now I like the super hot, trendy stuff. Forget getting your produce from the stupid grocery store. What if I had farm-to-table service? I contract with a local farm, and I tell them what I need, and they deliver it to me once a week or 2 times a week or whatever, and they put it also right at my door. Well, we had one of those when I was a kid. Sal the Fruit Man used to come around. He had an old school bus that he painted blue for some reason, and he would make those fruit and vegetable deliveries. Or I got it. How about this? What if artisanal milk could be delivered from beautiful, happy cows that are only grass-fed and no hormones, et cetera, and we will bottle this fantastic milk in glass bottles just like they used to / never have before because app, and deliver it to your house, right? Well, it's like the hottest thing going now. Milk delivery to your house? Yeah, I mean, just like when I was a kid? No, I mean, totally different from when you were a kid because app. And that seems to be like the hot thing now. And so I'm trying to find out, can we jump on that trend? Is there something that's hopelessly antiquated that everybody has sneered at for the past 30 years, but now seems either retro and cool or web-enabled and awesome and new? So that could be your challenge, and maybe you could see if you can come up with anything here. All right, let's see. Here's a couple of other things here. Michael Musson's got another comment on this one. Juicero-based toilet paper dispenser, $1,000. Dispenses the paper and tears it off with a patent-pending system. That could be it. Let's see. Other comments that might redirect us a little bit here. Let's see. We'll put this one aside. I think, interesting story. We'll probably have to spend more time than we have today diving into this suggestion that we look once again at the crazy, crazy world of Rhode Island politics, Rhode Island Democratic politics in particular. Ted Nesi, Nesi, has been Nisi. Oh, thank you for putting pronunciation in your Twitter bio. Fantastic. Okay. So Ted Nesi, who, I shouldn't have closed it for you. Political and economic reporter at Rhode Island CBS station WPRI 12. That is all the info I need. Being retweeted into my timeline here by, let's see. Mars Farmer 75 or Antifa Bruce Banner. An excellent collection of identifying tags. Who sends me Ted Nesi's post here. Wow. The Rhode Island Speakers PAC gave a max $1,000 donation to Representative, Moira Jane's challenger, Michael Earnhardt, after the national backlash over the Rhode Island Democratic Party endorsing him due to his support for Trump. Very interesting. And with a hat tip here to John Marion Jr., credited with this find. Interesting story, and perhaps we can put that tweet aside for us to dig into in the near future. But if you want to do the digging before we ever get to it, I can include that in the roundup. And good suggestion, Antifa Bruce Banner. Thanks for bringing it to our attention. And let's see, Mad Hatter has an interesting thing here. In Houston, ignore flooding at your own peril. Local matters. All right. Also, contesting every race will help statewide. Beto for Senate. Okay. Good point. Always keep your eye on the local activity, and it always pays. It looks like we have some breaking news, and I can see by the pictures being tweeted and YouTube videos being tweeted that apparently Aretha Franklin has died. I am sad to announce, but we learned the other day, we didn't announce it on the air, she was gravely ill. And so I guess it comes with a little bit of expectation here. And sad news. And, it'll be an interesting day as everyone shares their favorite memories and music from Aretha Franklin. That's not a bad thing. So this is the way we'll grieve. And we'll do that today. We won't be able to spend time on it on the air today because that will get us in copyright trouble. And, whether she's dead or not, someone will sue us for that. The algorithms don't care. So there we are. We've got that problem going for us, which is nice. All right, back into Pocket. We'll move on with other news and items that have been suggested for our consideration. Let's see. I think we've pretty well covered the Brennan security clearance revocation, but since we're bumping up against another break, we'll just make this one point, just to bring you up to speed in case you've been preoccupied with other things, whether Aretha Franklin or not. This interesting thing, Lester Holt, ladies and gentlemen, let Lester Holt know, if he wasn't taking the day off to mourn for Aretha Franklin, he could take it off because his work's been done. I have here a report in The Hill, because I read everything in The Hill, because pictures, I'm that simple. Trump has confessed. Trump ties revoking Brennan clearance to the Russia probe, just as he tied Comey's firing to the Russia probe, conveniently enough, on Lester Holt's national broadcast. We now have this one. Who was he talking to? I'm not sure. President Trump, in an interview, attributed his decision to revoke CIA Director John Brennan's security clearance to Brennan's role in the early stages of the investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election. The answer is that the interview was with the Wall Street Journal yesterday. He told them that he considers Brennan and other former intelligence officials whose clearances he's considering revoking among the leaders of the investigation. I call it the rigged witch hunt. Is it a sham And these people let it. Trump told the newspaper hours after it was announced that Brennan's clearance was being revoked. So there you have it. That's all you really need to get him on the obstruction charge. So I think that it's something that had to be done, he added. And we could go into detail about it, but it really has been rather amazing watching people not both sides it, but making the relatively interesting point that, well, maybe after you're out as an official from the previous administration, you should lose your security clearance. But intelligence directors are sort of a special breed. We'll talk a little bit about it after this. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, interrupting this little break to say thanks so much to all of you who are contributing supporters of Kagro in the Morning. Thousands of you are downloading the show each day, but fewer than 1 in 25 regular listeners are donating to help keep us on the air. For the money you'd spend on a single 3-minute iTunes song, we bring you 2 hours of great news and entertainment every day, 5 days a week. Patreon.com, Patreon.com makes it easy. You can find us there by searching Kagro X or David Waldman or Kagro in the Morning or even Daily Coast Radio in their search box, and you'll be right where you need to be to make easy, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Once again, thanks so much for your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Oh, and an interesting observation here. Having noted the death of Aretha Franklin, widely referred to, today and always, I guess, as the Queen of Soul, but noting that the King and Queen, and I guess we're talking about Elvis, passed away on the same day, 41 years apart. Conspiracy theory, she's faking her own death, something like that, I don't know. Is that what they're talking about? Because that's sort of, worth noting to say, or are we talking about something else here? I don't know. That's my guess anyway. Who else could we possibly be talking about? Should we check that? Amazing to, and it's not something I would know off the top of my head. So, you'll have to excuse me for that one. And, yep, that's the answer. August 16th, 1977. Others would scoff that I did not know that date off the top of my head, but if you believe like I do that he was abducted by aliens, there's no reason, necessarily to note the date. He will return, after all. Okay. He won't. That's it. He's dead. Okay. I mentioned that in heading off into the break that there was, I was just sort of fascinated by watching people respond to the Brennan security clearance revocation with, in some cases, of course, to be honest, the Glenn Greenwalds of the world saying, oh, it'll be so fascinating. I'd love to see, is there a GoFundMe yet? He tweeted, I think, for John Brennan. Would love to see liberals, filling his pockets after he, XYZ. Yeah, as director of the CIA, almost all directors of the CIA end up doing some pretty dubious things. It's kind of the nature of the job, and that's a bad thing, and we should note it. And John Brennan, not a particularly lovely director of the CIA. And I guess if you compartmentalize enough, you can be happy with his anti-Trumpism and still be annoyed with the other things that he did while he was director of the CIA, and I think that's a fair thing to do. Just as you can, for instance, as we've done here on the show, say James Comey made a terrible mistake and deserved to be fired for what he did with respect to the handling of the Hillary Clinton case, but also his dismissal under the circumstances in which he was dismissed by Donald Trump, and the reasons for the dismissal in the first place still constitute a crime in and of itself, and to the extent that Comey helps that crime be defined and prosecuted, or at least unearthed, that's a good thing. And so it doesn't make me a James Comey fan to say I am glad that James Comey has said this about his firing, and I'm glad that things are coming to light about Donald Trump, but do I think James Comey is awesome because of it? No. I don't. And I also don't necessarily think Sally Yates is particularly awesome either. I mean, she did a good job, and would I want her to be president? I don't know. What's she like? Not sure. Right. So same principle, of course, applies to Michael Avenatti or Avenatti, however it's spelled and pronounced, who says, I became a minor celebrity by fighting against Trump because I was Stormy Daniels' lawyer. And I'm very popular now. Okay, true. So I should run for president. All right. Well, not true, really. I mean, you can go ahead and do it, but I'm not interested just because you made the most of the position you were in to fight Donald Trump. And that's a good thing. Glad you did it. Want to be president? I don't know. What do you like? Anyway, the directors of the CIA, though, I mean, the argument was also made, well, if you're not the director of the CIA now, shouldn't we be serious about being a civilian government here when you are no longer driving the CIA? You give the keys back. And the security clearance should go with it. And a lot of people were complaining, and not just the Glenn Greenwalds of the world. There's also the Adrioses of the world pointing out, should you really be able to monetize having been director of the CIA? There might be no way to prevent that from happening, but do we have to subsidize your ability to monetize it by allowing you to hire yourself out for profit and maintain a security clearance that makes you that much more valuable? In other words, the bidding price goes up for your genius because you're also able to continue to call on the intelligence resources of the United States. And that's a good point. We shouldn't necessarily let you monetize that position. On the other hand, there is the theory under which a former intelligence director or other high-ranking intelligence connected official might make a good source of information for the analysis of events that unfold in the future. It's a limited club, but there's a small club of people whose job it was to digest this information, and they would be, reasonably enough considered experts who you might consult in the future. I'm not 100% sure exactly what to make of this piece of intelligence, given that, the source of the intelligence is somewhat obscure. The subject of the intelligence is a bit of an enigma. I'm new to the job, and though I've got lots of people here who have been on the job for a long time, I'd like you to weigh in on this. And you weighing in on the information is presumably somewhat more valuable if you can also study the current background materials, which would require your having a security clearance. And so why not keep it so that if I need to read you into a pending question, you're able to get up to speed and give me your thoughts, as opposed to my only being able to tell you half the story and saying, why don't you guess the rest? So, bit of a balancing game there. Is it worth having the ability to read former intelligence directors into a new problem if they can become at least somewhat more wealthy than they already were or already able to become on their own merits, thanks to the continuation of the security clearance for them? I don't know where I necessarily come down on that one, but, bit of an annoyance that you had to spend even 5 seconds yesterday saying, I don't love John Brennan and everything he's ever done just because I think it's wrong that they bypassed all standing practice on the revocation of his security clearance, or that he shouldn't even have it in the first place. You can have it done wrongly and for bad reasons, and also not like John Brennan very much, or also not like the fact that there are such security clearances, or not like the level of secrecy that we impose here in the United States anyway. And I think we've got room for a lot of that. And I imagine a lot of you felt the same way too, and I just kind of wanted to register that objection. All right. I also mentioned yesterday and didn't get to much of the reading of Matthew Iglesias's piece for Vox, explaining not only what Vox is and what pieces are, but Elizabeth Warren's plan to save capitalism. And I liked the idea. It sounded good because the 2 seconds worth of it that I got to look at sounded like stuff that we've said, hey, this is stupid and they should change it on the air, and I guess she is interested in trying to change it in real life. So let's discuss it a little bit, read through it, and get a sense for what else is in it, because I'm pretty sure that Elizabeth Warren knows a lot about economics and other kind of stuff like that and whatever. So she's probably better at putting together a comprehensive plan than we are, just sitting here saying, hey, stakeholders are more than just shareholders, you know. It's true. And I think of it myself as a bit of an insight because I've done no studying in the subject area whatsoever. So I never had the chance to find out that, for instance, probably lots of people have said exactly that and have already taken note very eloquently of the change in our language and the shift from teaching stakeholder obligations from corporations and shifting to shareholder obligations instead. So I never learned all that stuff. So yay, I stumbled upon it by myself, and it appears that people who know what they're talking about agree. This one here will explain all of it. Elizabeth Warren has a big idea that challenges how the Democratic Party thinks about solving the problem of inequality. We started off with this one yesterday. Instead of advocating for expensive new social programs like free college or health care, I'll take them if you got them. She's introducing a bill Wednesday, the Accountable Capitalism Act, that would redistribute trillions of dollars from rich executives and shareholders to the middle class. Yay, I'm in the middle class. What about the lower classes? I don't know. We'll probably find a way to get you some help too, maybe later. So maybe it's not great. I don't know. Anyway, it says without costing a dime. So I guess this means a continued role for you if you're a Bernie Sanders fan, right? Then you can be the ones that say, hey, what about people other than the middle class? And people like me will say, damn, that's right. I feel bad about that. Bad enough, in fact, that I should help pass some things on. That's the plan. That's the role you can play in all this. Make sure that oh my God, are we asking you to help keep it trickling? Well, let's see if we can find a way to bypass us. We don't have to be the ones handing out the money. I think everybody would appreciate that. Warren's plan, let's not start with the problems. Let's start with the interesting stuff. Warren's plans start from the premise that corporations that claim the legal rights of personhood should be legally required to accept the moral obligations of personhood. Traditionally, she writes in a companion op-ed for the Wall Street Journal, corporations sought to succeed in the marketplace, but they also recognized their obligations to employees, customers, and the community. In recent decades, for some strange reason, MBAs, they stopped in favor of a singular devotion to enriching shareholders, and that's what Warren wants to change. Hey, me too. The new energy on the left, oh good, I love energy, is all about making government bigger and bolder, an ideal driven by a burgeoning movement towards democratic socialism. It's inspired likely 2020 Democratic contenders to draw battle lines around how far they'd go to change the role of government in American life. Warren supports expanding many of the programs in play, and she's voted to do so, but the rollout of her bill suggests that as she weighs whether to get into the presidential race, she's weighing that, she'll focus on how to prioritize workers in the American economic system while leaving businesses as the primary driver of it. Warren wants to eliminate the huge financial incentives that entice CEOs to flush cash out to shareholders rather than reinvest in businesses. And by the way, one of the things that I've always liked to point to is the very curious situation back in the innocent days of Wall Street, the movie, and that, derives from those go-go Reagan years, right? There was this very quaint situation where Gordon Gekko, the totally evil rich guy, corporate raider, as they used to call them back in the days before we figured out we needed to call them private equity fund managers or hedge fund managers. His big complaint about the paper company that he was taking over, the famous scene, the greed is good speech where he's making it at the shareholders meeting, was a Teldar paper. The very quaint situation, now totally antiquated and out of date, was that the board of Teldar was accused of being uninterested in and unresponsive to shareholders and the shareholder value because they were not shareholders in the company. And his big reform, really, was that, well, they'd be much more interested in the financial performance of the company if their compensation was tied to that performance. In other words, if they were shareholders in the company. Now, of course, the boards are all huge shareholders in the company because they all watched the Wall Street, the movie, I guess, and believed that greed was good. And, you know, maximizing shareholder value is, well, it's good for shareholders, right? It's not so good for everybody else, but somehow that was convincing enough. And the idea of tying pay and bonuses to financial performance passed out as a good idea. And then we made them all massive shareholders. And then voila, all of a sudden, properly doing business in this country meant extracting as much wealth from the company as possible via shareholding. And oh my God, that sucks. And now here we are. So here we are. Warren wants to eliminate the huge financial incentives that entice CEOs and others to flush cash out to shareholders rather than reinvest in businesses. She wants to curb corporations' political activities, and for the biggest corporation, she's proposing a dramatic step that would ensure workers and not just shareholders get a big voice on big strategic decisions, or a voice on big strategic decisions. I moved the big and then repeated it. Warren hopes this will spur a return to greater corporate responsibility. I hope so. And bring back some other aspects of the more egalitarian era of American capitalism post-World War II. More business investment, more meaningful career ladders for workers, more financial stability, and higher pay. In other words, the good old days, make America great again, and or reinvent antiquated stuff that we sneered at for the past 30 years and make it premiumized, and let's see if we can't get an app for that. So I want to go back to days where milk was delivered from the farm to my door, where grocery clerks were on the local store's payroll, and they would take my orders remotely, whether by phone or internet, and deliver the groceries to me. And corporations would pay attention to more than just shareholders. They would pay attention to their communities and their workers, and we would usher in a more egalitarian era of American capitalism. Sounds like a plan. As much as Warren's proposal is about ending inequality, it's also about saving capitalism, which may or may not be popular, but it's out there. The Accountable Capitalism Act, Real Citizenship for Corporate Persons, is the name of the next section, and I don't know if that's also the title of her press release on it, but whatever. The conceit tying together Warren's ideas is that if corporations are going to have the legal rights of persons, they should be expected to act like decent citizens who uphold their fair share of the social contract, and not act like sociopaths whose sole obligation is profitability, as is currently conventional in American business thinking. And it absolutely is. We teach it in business school. We teach it in law school, that that's the legal obligation, and that you could and should, and you could even get rich doing it, could and should sue corporations that don't do it. That's like where we are in terms of the sociological impact of starting to teach that stuff. If we teach it everywhere, we get used to the idea that, hell, not only is it a good idea, it ought to be illegal not to do it. We're really there. Warren wants to create an Office of United States Corporations. We'll have to work on that name. Inside the Department of Commerce, which, first of all, we should get rid of the criminal Secretary of Commerce that we have now. More news on his corruption, by the way, emerging by the day. Maybe we can get to that tomorrow or, some point in the future. But you've likely read those stories. Anyway, she wants to create the Office of United States Corporations and require any corporation with revenue over $1 billion, seems like a place to start. Only a few thousand companies, by the way, that have revenue over $1 billion, but they are a large share of overall employment and economic activity, and they should have to obtain a federal charter of corporate citizenship. After all, you only become a corporation by dint of government agreement to recognize you as an entity. Right, as a legal entity. The government has to agree to do that. You're not a person. We have to pretend you are, and you're getting a charter from someone anyway. Why not add a federal one on top of it? Because we hate big government. Oh, well. Unfortunately, you're talking to people who don't hate big government necessarily all by itself. The charter tells company directors to consider the interests of all relevant stakeholders. That would include shareholders, of course, but also customers, employees, and the communities in which the company operates when making decisions. That could concretely shift the outcome of some shareholder lawsuits, but is aimed more broadly at shifting American business culture out of its current shareholders first framework and back towards something more like the broad ethic of social responsibility that took hold during World War II and continued for several decades. You know, the last time we defeated fascism, I'll add. Business executives, like everyone else, want to have good reputations and be regarded as good people, but when pressed about topics of social concern, frequently fall back on the idea that their first obligation is to do what's right for the shareholders. And frequently that is reinforced, I would say, by the fact that you can sue them for not doing that and win. A new charter would remove that crutch and leave executives accountable as human beings for the rights and wrongs of their own decisions, from which they are largely shielded by the business decision rule, a separate but, well, I don't want to say separate but equal. Separate but equally important, but a codicil to the norm by which we've currently established that shareholders have primacy in things. More concretely, the United States corporations would be required to allow their workers to elect 40% of the membership of their board of directors. Warren also tacks on a couple more modest ideas. One is to limit corporate executives' ability to sell shares of stock that they receive as pay, requiring that such shares be held for at least 5 years after they were received and at least 3 years after a share buyback. The aim is to disincentivize stock-based compensation in general, as well as the use of share buybacks as a tactic for executives to maximize their pay. It says their one pay. I'm not certain what that's supposed to be, but okay. The other proposal is to require corporate political activity to be authorized specifically by both 75% of the shareholders and 75% of board members, many of whom would be worker representatives under the full bill, to ensure that corporate political activity truly represents a consensus among stakeholders rather than C-suite class solidarity. It's easy to imagine the restrictions on corporate political activity and some curbs on stock sale shenanigans becoming broad consensus points for congressional Democrats and even part of a 2019 legislative agenda if the midterms go well. But the bigger ideas about corporate governance would be a revolution in American business practice to undo about a generation's worth of shareholder supremacy. And then on to a section called the rise, I've scrolled past it, the rise of shareholder capitalism, something we've talked about quite a bit. The next section is the economics of shareholder supremacy. We've touched on that as well. Co-determination is a huge transfer of wealth, it says down here, and that, I guess, has been the point onto which the conservative backlash has latched, and they basically just launched the same old program against it. Why, it's socialisms and a huge nationalization of assets, and it isn't, but that's what they're going to accuse it of being anyway, so you might as well live with it and actually just talk about the most important and popular consensus points, as he put it. Plenty more on this for your reading entertainment, and we probably will discuss a little bit more of it in the future, although maybe not necessarily directly from the article. I want to use a few more minutes to propose another shift in thinking, which I thought was very interesting, and this one actually brought to us by Think Progress, and you know how it is with thinking. They want to do some thinking over there at Think Progress. Jessica M. Goldstein has the byline on this article. There's a total shift of topics, but like I said, I connect them as changes in thinking, which I think are interesting and worth adopting. Harvey Weinstein is the topic. Harvey Weinstein, judge, says the casting couch, you know, that old trope of Hollywood. It's true, true trope. Harvey Weinstein, judge, says casting couch could be form of sex trafficking. And I did see, I think maybe Jason Lincoln's retweet this thing saying, hey, I like the way this judge thinks. And that got my attention too. I do too. I think I do. Let's look into this. Harvey Weinstein is an alleged, you have to say that, serial sexual predator whose reported offenses range from violent and criminal, rape and sexual assault, to gross and also criminal, for instance, the various things that he's done in front of actresses and reporters, etc., that involve, let's say, well, physically they don't involve anybody but him, but they are gross and disturbing nonetheless. You get my meaning? I don't really want to talk about it that much. But if you read the article, if you don't know, you'll know pretty quickly because they just come out and blurt it right out. Anyway, then of course his offenses also include things like technically not criminal but still offensive to me personally, Jessica speaking here, but probably offensive to all of us as well, bullying actresses into wearing Marquesa dresses, I guess, on the red carpet, strong-arming Oscar voters into selecting Shakespeare in Love as Best Picture over Saving Private Ryan. And according to a New York judge, he can also be sued on sex trafficking charges. That's the interesting part. Weinstein was arrested in May and charged with first-degree rape and felony predatory sexual assault. He consistently denies all allegations against him, and on the day of his arrest, his attorney, Benjamin Brafman, told the assembled members of the press, Mr. Weinstein did not invent the casting couch in Hollywood. So what? We'll continue with this one. To the extent that there's bad behavior in that industry, that is not what this is about. Bad behavior is not on trial in this case. Well, yes, it is. His bad behavior, but okay. This is a questionable legal strategy for a number of reasons. For instance, you don't have to invent a crime in order to be guilty of committing that crime. You can literally be a copycat criminal and still be a criminal. Copyright law in the criminal community is not super stringent on these matters, but it's not a copyright violation we're really talking about here. The casting couch, though, is the euphemistic term of art long deployed in Hollywood in an effort to disguise sexual violence as a cool rite of passage for women who want to make it in the movies and the men who feel entitled to have sex with them. That's exactly right. And as U.S. District Judge Robert W. Sweet ruled Monday, it could be considered a commercial sex act, which means Weinstein can in fact be sued under sex trafficking laws. Why not? Kadian Noble sued Weinstein last fall. She says that in 2014, Weinstein molested her and forced her into a bathroom to watch him masturbate. And now I've gotten onto that topic I didn't want to discuss before, but that's what he did after she and Weinstein watched her demo reel in a hotel room in Cannes, France. I've never been able to pronounce that place correctly anyway. Damn it. I thought high-class stuff went on there. Oh, well. Weinstein's lawyers argued that nothing of value was exchanged between the two. Quite the interesting plot twist, considering Weinstein spent much of his career shouting about how a meeting with him could change a person's life, and or how refusing him could mean the end of one's career and reputation. Great point. Judge Sweet rejected Weinstein's arguments, writing that for an aspiring actress, meeting a world-renowned film producer carries value in and of itself, and that even if the meeting alone weren't enough, Noble's reasonable expectation of receiving job opportunities from Weinstein in the future, based on Harvey's repeated representations that she would, is sufficient. Sweet went on, the opportunity, moreover, for the actress to sit down with that producer in a private meeting to review her film reel and discuss a proposed film role carries value that is career-making and life-changing. The contention, therefore, that Noble was given nothing of value, that the expectation of a film role, a modeling meeting, of his people being in touch with her, had no value, well, that does not reflect modern reality. As USA Today reports, Sweet put a footnote on the reality to cite sources that detail the way the so-called casting couch works, and saying the concept has been in the American lexicon for nearly a century. Through his lawyers, Weinstein claimed that allowing Noble's lawsuit to proceed means a too expansive definition of sex trafficking laws, one that would now cover all sexual activity between adults when one person holds power and influence over the other. Oh yeah? The article is finished. That's it, by the way. And I just add, oh yeah? That's interesting. Tell me more about that. Why is that not interesting or something we don't want? Or at the very least, it should open the door to that, and we can pick the most egregious cases and see if we can draw some lines later on to save people who are lower level, if that is something you're actually interested in. Raise your hand, by the way, if you want to identify yourself as being interested in that. It's pretty amazing, and a shift in thinking that time has come, perhaps right alongside Elizabeth Warren's economic thinking. I know that's a shift in subject areas, but I like the way that tied together. And you'll like the way the programming on this station ties together if you stay tuned for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Justice Putnam. Next, here's what you'll hear more about. I've got a little extra time to do that today. A Fox News host wonders if maybe Russia paid Manafort to run Trump's campaign. Someone had to. He didn't really do it for free. He's too greedy for that, right? A Mexican businesswoman who has visited her aging parents in Maryland every year for the last 10 years has, guess what, had her visa confiscated and is now barred from entering the U.S. Why? Find out after this. A little bit more here, too. We'll try and shoehorn in after the announcement.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
More to stay tuned for here. Not one Republican supports a bill to protect domestic violence victims. Georgia's shotgun-toting Trump-style Republican candidate for governor and current Secretary of State Brian Kemp is being sued for exposing the sensitive records of over 6 million voters in a massive data breach. What a surprise. Let's hold him responsible this time.